So I turned it on. Is this registering to you? I can always use the mic on the table. I can use a different mic.
No, that's working.
Oh, it's just not on the speakers?
Yeah, it's just the crowd's really loud. We don't have a person in the face. Yeah. I've been doing this all weekend with rock musicians, setting it up.
Shana Tova. Check. No, you're fine. It won't matter. I wrote out two, well, and I'm going to do the shorter one. So I feel bad. I worked on two. Okay. How you doing? no, we only have 3 minutes, or we have 5 minutes until sundown, so you're right. Shana Tova. We begin customarily with our poem from Rabbi Sarah, who cannot be with us tonight because she's caring for family and keeping the Ten Commandments so devotedly. She's asked me to read for her instead. And as I go through the poem, I ask for our ark opener and our two Torah holders to take their place so we're ready to go for Kol Nidrei without delay. Thank you. Outside, the grasses lean toward evening. The sumac dips its leaves in crimson, clustering fists full of soft tart seed. The purple aster and goldenrod nod along the bank of the Huron on its silent glide through our town. It is sometimes enough to watch the sky roll toward night, the orange moon yawn itself awake over the horizon. It is sometimes enough to know that we tried. We tried our hardest, even though we have far to go. Inside, we gather ourselves into rows, our bodies curved into chairs like questions, or standing in straight exclamation. The ark before us, robed in white, will open itself to prayer, to lift our heavy grief, heal our sick, erase our fear, to grant us life. Some prayers leap forward with hope, some fold backward into the mist of memory, seeking comfort, finding forgiveness. The gates of heaven open as we cradle Torah in our arms. Promises of the past bend around us. We are freed, each of us a scroll. What will we write of ourselves? Avinu Malkeinu, God of our fathers and mothers, bless the setting of the sun. Bless the rising of our hearts. We rise, page 204, and the ark is opened. We assemble the celestial Beit Din, which releases us from the vows that we make for the coming year, which allows us to make those vows more freely and more deeply and more connected to God.
Vishiva Shemala Uvishiva Shemata Al dat hamakom ועל dat הגל אנו מתחילים להתפלל עם העבריינים.
205.
Kol Nidrei Service Vecharamei Vekonamei Vechinuyei Vekinusei Ushavut Dindarna Urishtabana Huda Harimana Vidyasana Al Nafshatana Miyom Kippurim Zeh Had Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova Kon Yichadna Behon Kon Yehon Sharon Shvitin Betelin Uvutalin La Sharirin Velakayamin Nidarana La Nidrei Vesarana La Hesare Ushuatana La Shivot.
You are welcome to join in with the one who is sending our prayers on high.
Kol Nidrei Service Vecharamei Vekonamei Vechinuyei Vekinusei Ushavut Dindarna Urishtabana Hoda Chalimna Vidyasarna Al Nafshatana Miyom Kippurim Zeh Ad Yom Kippurim Haba Aleinu Letova Kon Yichadna Behon Kon Yehon Sharon Shvitin Betelin Uvutalin לשרירים ולקיימים נדרנה לנדרי ושרנה לשרי ושועתנה לשבועות.
And the third time.
Kol Nidrei Service Vecharamei Vekonamei Vechinuyei Vekinusei Ushavuot Dindana Urish Tabana Odacharimna Vidyasana al nafshatana miyom kippurim zeh ad yom kippurim Ha'aleinu Tova Kohon Icharatna Behon Kohon Yeon Sharon Shvitin Betelin Uvutalin Lasharirin V'lakayamin Nidrana Nidrei Vesarana la Hesarea Oshuatana la Shavuot V'nislach l'chol adat b'nei Yisroel V'lagir hagar b'tocham Ki l'chol ha'am b'ishgaga Slach na lavon ha'amazeh Kegodel chasdecha V'chasher nasata le'amazeh Mimisraim v'adheina v'sham ne'emar Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Vayomer Adonai salachti kidvarecha Kidvarecha Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Shechianu V'kiyamanu V'kiyanu Lasman hazeh.
We remain standing as the scrolls are put away, and we're on 207.
Baruch et Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach. Leolam Avoed. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach. Leolam Avoed.
We may be seated. I invite the teenagers in the community to go out to the front porch who wish to join Mira in a conversation about the meaning of the themes of the holiday and how we practice them. So, and I want to ask, for the people in the back, can you hear me okay? Oh, wow, I'll turn it down then. On page 207, again, teens who are joining Mira for a conversation, getting to the heart of the matter, will be with her, and they're welcome to meet on the front porch before heading next door as we continue to the bottom of the page. You know, I used to say go with Ron, and now I say go with Mira, so it really is L'Ador Vador.
El Kavakayam, Tamidim Locholeno Lelam Voer Baruch Ata Adonai, Amari Varavim.
208. We prepare for the Shema. And I want everybody who is joining us by streaming, you are part of this congregation in that stream-a-gog. And so when we get to the Shema, I want you to do it so loud that the neighbors hear and they know it's Kol Nidrei, and I don't have to tell the people in the sanctuary what to do.
V'avadcha al tasir mimenu yolamim baruch ata Adonai ohev amo Yisroel Shema Yisroel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kivol Malchuto Leolam Avoed V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam b'vanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'beitecha u'lechtecha b'derech u'shokvecha u'b'kumecha u'kshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu l'totafot bein einecha u'chtavtam al mezuzot beitecha v'yisharecha.
Continue silently on 209.
Adonai Elohechem Emet.
We're continuing on 210.
Umalchuto v'ratzon kiblu alehem Moshe uMiriam u'vanei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba v'amru chulam michamocha v'elim Adonai michamocha nedar b'kodesh Nora tehi Lord, Hosefele, Malchutcha, Rauvanecha, Vokayam Lifne Moshe Zeli, Anu V'Amro, Adonai Meloch, Leolam Avoed, V'Nemar, Kifada Adonai Yaakov, Gelo Miad Chazak Mimenu, Baruch Ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
211, I mentioned on Rosh Hashanah that this is the year I make a little resolution to bring back the responsive reading, which I've been shunning for decades. So I will read responsively with you on page 211. Let's give it a try. I'll begin. Allow us, Adonai our God, to sleep peacefully and to awaken again to life, our sovereign. Shield us, remove from us enemies and pestilence, sword, starvation, and sorrow, and remove the evil forces that surround us.
Shelter us in the shadow of your wings. You alone, watch over and deliver us. You are the sovereign, merciful, and compassionate.
Ensure our going and our coming for life and peace now and forever.
May you spread over us your canopy of peace. Baruch atah Adonai. Peace over us, all Israel, over Jerusalem. Ufros aleinu, sukat shlomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, hapore sukat shalom, aleinu, v'yakol amo Yisrael, v'yal Yerushalayim.
On page 212, we're getting ready for the silent Amida. It's really quite an expanded Amida, unusual even for holidays, but special for tonight. The main features are the Ashamnu and the Al-Chet, and additional Slichot, additional apologies. So I invite you to go through the traditional liturgy. If you're looking for other kinds of inspirations, we have the booklet that has a couple of alternative Al-Chets, and as well as inspirations and kavanot. Another possibility is when you get to the Ashamnus and the Al-Chets, make your own that should be in there and is not. You know, I was petting my cat today, trying to soothe my stressed soul, and I was thinking, you know, I so lovingly pet my cat with my hands. I use my hands in such a loving manner. And I asked myself, I said to myself, for the sin of not using my hands more lovingly in the world. There's so many al-chets that we can add that can spontaneously come to us when we're going into the Yom Kippur and the days of off-space. So as you're going through, maybe think of one in a different way than you've thought about it before and how it might be true, maybe not in the literal sense, but in a deeper sense. And think of one or two that you would add to the list. Also, for those who are streaming, at the bottom of the page, if you don't have a machzor, I've added some thoughts that you can view online, so you have an Amida to take with you. And that'll start at the bottom of 212, after Neil chants the Chatzi Kaddish, for which I ask all of you to please rise.
Ki vayom hazeh yichaper alechem ataher etchem mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai titaru yikadash shemei rabah
Amen.
v'yamad yivrach yirotei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayechol Beit Yisrael b'gala u'bizman hakarim v'imru amen yehi shmeira mevorach li'olam u'lomei almayah Yitbarach
Yishtabach, V'yitbar V'yitram V'naseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalav Shmei Kudsha.
Richu.
Leila, Leila, Mikol Birchata V'shirata, Tushbichata V'nechemata, Damiran B'yama V'meru. Amen.
Silent Amida 213 through 221, or other inspirational readings, are what you will now see on your screen. those who are still davening, please continue as I ask the ARP openers on page 223 to come forward and open the curtain at this time. Yeah.
Yahalle, Yahalle, Tachanenu miyarev, V'yavo, V'yavo, Shavatenu miboker, V'yerae, Rinunenu, Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Rinunenu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Koleinu me'yarav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, Tzidkateinu mi'boker, V'yerae, Pidyoneinu, Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Pidyoneinu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Inu Yainu Meyarav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, Slichatenu miboker, V'yerae, Na'akatenu, Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Na'akatenu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Minuseinu me'arav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, Le'amanu miboker, V'yerae, Kippureinu Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Kippureinu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Yisheinu me'arav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, Tahareinu miboker, V'yerae, Chinunenu Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Chinunenu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Zichroneinu me'arav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, V'udeinu miboker, V'yerae, Hadrateinu Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Hadrateinu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Dovkeinu me'arav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, Gileinu miboker, V'yerae, Bakashateinu Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Bakashateinu Alarev, Yahalle, Yahalle, Enkateinu me'arav, V'yahavo, V'yahavo, Elecha miboker, V'yerae, Eleinu Alarev, V'yerae, V'yerae, Eleinu Alarev.
May our prayers rise up at evening, coming to you with the dawn tomorrow morning, and transforming us at dusk at Nila. We may be seated. A reading. I lost my way. I forgot to call on your name. The raw heart beat against the world, and the tears were for my lost victory. But you are now here. You have always been here. The world is all forgetting, and the heart is a rage of directions. But your name unifies the heart, and the world is lifted into its place. Blessed is the one who waits in the traveler's heart for his turning. Leonard Cohen. 225.
הנשם הלך והגוף פועלך חוסה חוסה העם הלך הנשם הלך והגוף שלך אדוני עשה למען שמך עתנו על שמך אדוני עשה למען שמך בעבור כבוד שמך כי אל חנון ורחום שמך למען שמך אדוני וסלחת לעווננו כי רבו דרכך אלוהינו להעריך אפיך לרעים ולטובים והיא תהילתך
דרכך אלוהינו להעריך אפיך לרעים לטובים והיא תהילתך.
למענך אלוהינו עשה ולא לנו תראה עמידתנו דלים וריקים.
למענך אלוהינו עשה ולא לנו ראה מידתנו דלים וריקים.
תעלה ארוחה לעל הנידף תנחם על עפר ואפר תשליך חטאינו ותחום במעשיך תדע כי אין איש עשה עמנו צדקה.
תעלה ארוחה לעל הנידף תנחם על עפר ואפר תשליך חטאינו ותחון במעשיך תדע כי אין איש עשה עמנו tzedakah. 226. God, you are patient, you are known as the source of mercy. You taught the way of teshuvah. Today and every day, call to mind the wonder of your compassion and mercy toward the children of those you loved. Turn toward us in mercy, for you are the source of mercy.
תעבור על פשע ותמחה אשם כי יום ויתייצב עמושם תאזין שבתנו ותקשיב מנו מאמר כי יום ויקרא בשם אדוני ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא אדוני אדוני אל רחום וחנון ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת נוצר חסד לאלפים נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה וסלחת לעווננו ולחטאתנו וחטאנו סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו מחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח ורב חסד לכל הקורך.
As we head into the special piyut on 227 for Yom Kippur, we look at each stanza and remind ourselves that each are about a different substance, because each substance has its own wisdom, just as each person has its own wisdom of its substance. So as we chant through it, we wonder as we head continually inside and inside through this 25-hour period, we are asking ourselves, what is the substance I have made? What am I made of? What would it mean to shape me in the right way? How can I be a partner with God with understanding the substance I am, and therefore knowing what direction I need to shape me in to my holiest version of myself? 227.
כי הנה חכמה ביד היוצר, ברצותו מרחיב, וברצותו מקצר, כן אנחנו בידך חסד נוצר, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כאבן ביד המסתת, ברצותו אוחז, וברצותו מחטט, כן אנחנו בידך מחיה וממוטט, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר. כי הנה כגרזן ביד החרש, ברצותו דיבק לאור, וברצותו פרש, כן אנחנו בידך תומך אני ורש, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר.
As the helm in the hand of the sailor who holds the course or abandons it at will, so are we in your hand, good and forgiving God. Together, recall your covenant. Do not heed the accuser. As glass in the hand of the glazer who shapes or melts it at will, so are we in your hand, partner of sin and transgression. Recall your covenant. Do not heed the accuser. As cloth in the hand of the draper who drapes or twists it at will, so are we in your hand, righteous God.
Call your covenant.
Do not heed the accuser.
כי הנה ככסף ביד הצורף, ברצותו משגשג, וברצותו מצרף, כן אנחנו בידך ממסיר למזור טרף, לברית הבית, לברית הבית, ואל תפן ליצר.
On 228, we have reflections from Psalms. Just want to read a little bit of the beginning. Tell me, God, my end, the measure of my days, that I would know how fleeting my life is. We so often walk about like empty shells. All our efforts add up to little. We pile up possessions, but don't know how to account for our lives. As so many of us are dressed in white, it's not required. My daughters keep asking, do we have to? And I'm like, no, it's an optional, additional spiritual practice, not for Neil, but for the rest of us. Sorry, just not giving you a choice. Because it reminds us, of course, of the two things. One is that, like the color of our soul is the color of the angels, it's this kind of clear tahara, purity, gives us a sense of the purity that we are able to serve and change our lives to do so and leave behind that which is weighing us down. And it also reminds us of the shrouds in which we are traditionally buried. And so that we remind ourselves this perspective of how brief our life is and how we use that to think about the practice of gaining from that knowledge the wisdom of how to live each of our days and our years in such a way that we have the quality that we wish to have for it. So I share this reading. I'll ask you if in your mind you can try to guess who it comes from. It is the denial of death that is partially responsible for people living empty, purposeless lives. For when you live as if you'll live forever, it becomes too easy to postpone the things you know you must do. You live your life in preparation for tomorrow or in remembrance of yesterday, and meanwhile, each day is lost. In contrast, when you fully understand that each day you awaken could be the last you have, the book of life, you take the time that day to grow, to become more of who you really are, to reach out to other human beings. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, 229.
אל מלך יושב על כיסא רחמים, אל הורית לנו לומר 13, זכור לנו היום ברית 13, כמו שידעת לנו מקדם, כמו שכתוב, וירד אדוני בניו, ויתייצב עמו שם, ויקרא בשם אדוני. ויעבור אדוני על פניו ויקרא, אדוני, אדוני, אל רחום וחנון, ערך אפיים ורב חסד ואמת, נוצר חסד לאלפים, נושא עוון ופשע וחטא ונקה, וסלחת לעווננו וחטאתנו וחטאנו. סלח לנו אבינו כי חטאנו, וחל לנו מלכנו כי פשענו, כי אתה אדוני טוב וסלח, ורב חסד לכל קוראיך.
We turn the page to 231. We've been just beating our chests a bit, and I think especially with the years we've had behind us, sometimes we beat our chests too much, and we don't count the goodness that we've done in the world because we see only where we fall short. And so I want to share, it's in the reader, but you can just listen, some sins against self that I wrote with Lynn, drawing from the work of David Burns and others. And I just think that the essence of the introspective work is making reconciliation with others, sins against other human beings, reconciliation with God, which is as deep inside as you can go because it doesn't stop, and reconciliation with yourself. So I read this list that I cribbed with a lot of help for sins we commit against ourselves. For the sin of thinking I must never fail or make a mistake, and for the sin of thinking people won't love or accept me if I am flawed. For the sin of believing my worth as a human being depends on my achievements, intelligence, talent, status, income, or my looks. And for the sin of believing I need everyone's approval to be worthwhile. For the sin of believing I can't feel happy and fulfilled without being specifically loved by one person. And for the sin of believing that a rejection proves there's something wrong with me. For the sin of thinking God wants me to please others, even if I make myself miserable in the process. And for the sin of expecting that people who love each other should never fight or argue. For the sin of believing that the problems in my relationships are bound to be my fault. For the sin of believing the problems in my relationship must be the other person's fault. Thank you for listening. For the sin of expecting others to always treat me in the way I expect. For the sin of always needing to be right. For the sin of believing my problems could never be solved. For the sin of thinking I could never feel truly happy or fulfilled. For the sin of thinking I'm broken somehow or inferior to others. And for the sin of not seeing myself as God sees me. For the sin of expecting myself to be happy so often, all the time, most of the time, confident. For the sin of expecting myself to be in control. And for the sin of believing anger is dangerous and should be avoided at all costs. For the sin of believing that I should never feel sad, anxious, inadequate, jealous, or vulnerable. For the sin of sweeping my feelings under the rug so I don't upset anyone or make myself vulnerable. For the sin of believing that the people I care about are demanding, manipulative, and powerful. And for the sin of fearing that if one person looks down on me, the word will spread and soon everyone will. For the sin of believing that I have to impress people or they won't like me. And for the sin of believing I have to perform in social situations. For the sin of believing that something's wrong with me if I don't experience life as easier. And for the sin of believing I always have to be strong and I cannot be weak. And finally, for the sin of believing that if I worry enough, then everything will turn out okay. And for the sin of viewing my failures as weaknesses rather than as experiences. In the words of Rabindranath Tagore, grant that I may not be a coward, feeling your mercy in my success alone, but let me find the grasp of your hand in my failure. We turn to page 233. We rise as the ark is opened.
Shema koleinu, Adonai Eloheinu, chus v'rachem aleinu, v'chaber b'rachamim v'ratzon tfilateinu.
Shema kolenu Adonai Eloheinu, aleinu, v'kaper brachmim v'ratzon et tfilateinu.
Hashivenu Adonai lecha v'nashuva, chadesh ameinu k'kedem.
Hashivenu Adonai lecha v'nashuva, chadesh ameinu k'kedem.
Al tashlichenu milfanecha, v'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu.
Al tashlichenu milfanecha v'ruach kodshecha al tikach mimenu.
Al tashlichenu le'ed zikna kichlot kochenu al tazvenu.
Al tashlichenu le'tzikna kichlot kochenu al ta'azvenu.
Al tazvenu alenu al tichach mimenu. Aseyimanu od l'tovo yeruch tenonu v'vevoshu. כי אתה לא יזנו וניחמתנו, אמרנו, הזינו לאדוני ונחגיגנו. יהי לרצון אמרי פינו, וגאון ליבנו לפניך. אדוני צורנו וגואלנו, כי לך אדוני אהלנו, כי אתה תענה אדוני אלוהינו. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, אל תעזבנו עד תשנו, ואל תחלימנו ואל תפר ביתך ואיתנו, קרבנו תורתך, למדנו מצוותיך. הורינו דרכך, הטיבנו ירא את שמך, ומולד לבבינו להבנתך, ונשוב אליך באמת בלב כשלם. ולמען שמך הגדול, תמחה ותשא כבודנו, ככתוב בדברי קודשך, למען שמך אדוני, וסלחת לעווני, כי ראו.
And we're on 234, and we'll do the page, and we'll then continue to 235. And for those who are streaming, I prepared a little something for you in case you don't have a machzor. Again, Ki Anu Amecha 234.
Eloheinu. Lanu kaper lanu ki anu amecha ve'ata Rashanu, Shichanu, Tiavnu, Tahinu, Tihitanu.
You may be seated.
Sahanu mitzvotacha mishpatecha tovim velo shavalanu v'tat tzadik al kol haba aleinu ki amad asita v'anachnu yeshanu.
We go to the last paragraph of the page.
Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu slach m'chol avonotina b'yom ha'kippurim hazeh mechav haver fisheinu v'chatotenu mineged inecha v'chofi yisreinu yishtabed lach Orpenu l'shuv elecha, v'chadesh kidyoteinu lishmor pikodecha, umol et levavenu laval ulira et shmecha, hakatuv b'toratecha, umol Adonai Elohecha et levavcha, et levazarecha, lava et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nashecha, lemad chayecha.
236. Before we do the last paragraph on the page, we are getting ready for the Al-Chet on 237 to do it publicly. And so as a little way of thinking about it, if you run into something on the Al-Chet that you really think you don't do, you think I'm going to tell you, I bet you do it. That's a different sermon. I'll believe you tonight, okay? That you think you don't do. So my question for you is, how do you react when someone does do it? I often think to myself, am I bringing graciousness and grace into situations where I could be doing more in the face of the actions of my neighbors and my peers? Because, as we know, we're all in it together. It's a we. So even if there's something I don't do, is there a way I increase holiness in the situation when another is bringing this into it? Last paragraph of 236.
אתה יודע רזי עולם ותנות שטרי כל חי, אתה חופש כורך פתם וכן כללות לליל, אין דבר נעלם ממך ונסתר מנגד עיניך. ובכן יהי רצון מלפניך, אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, שתסלח לנו כל חטאותינו ותמחל לנו על כל עוונותינו, ותכפר לנו על כל שיינו.
We rise 237.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך באונס וברצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך באימוץ הלב, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בבלי דעת, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בביטוי שפתיים, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגילוי עריות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בגלוי ובסתר, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדעת ובמרמה, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בדיבור פה.
We have sinned against you knowingly, deceitfully. We've sinned against you by the way we talk. We have sinned against you by scorning parents and scorning teachers. And we have sinned against you purposely and by mistake. Let's take one moment to read one silently to yourself.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביצר הרע, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך ביודעים ובלא יודעים, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכחש ובכזב, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בכפת שוחד, על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלצון, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בלשון הרע.
We've sinned against you by the way we do our business. We've sinned against you in eating and in drinking. We've sinned against you by greed and interest. We've sinned against you through arrogance, sinned against you in everyday conversation. We've sinned against you through conspiratorial glances. We have sinned against you through condescension, and we have sinned against you through stubbornness.
על חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעיניים רמות, ועל חטא שחטאנו לפניך בעזות מצח, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, מחל לנו, כפר לנו. על חטא שקטן לפניך בפריקת עול, ועל חטא שקטן לפניך בפלילות.
We continue silently.
על חטא שקטן לפניך בתשומת יד, ועל חטא שקטן לפניך בתימהון לבב, ועל כולם אלוה סליחות, סלח לנו, נחל לנו, כפר לנו.
We may be seated. You're welcome to peruse the following pages, which have different poetry and poems. I'm actually going to go back instead of going forward. Maybe that's the theme of the holiday. 231. There's an absolutely gorgeous poem by Yehuda Halevi. I almost feel, and this is where I'm trying to channel a little bit of Rabbi Daberson. I'm never at his level of like, which I love. He teaches me how to like look at the liturgy as like a journey through the holiday. And so you can tell me I'm wrong about this, but I almost feel like this Yehuda Halevi poem shouldn't be on Kol Nidrei. I feel like it should be at Nila, because it's almost too much the end of the journey at this point, but maybe that's why it's here, to give us a taste of it. Adonai, where shall I find you? High and hidden in your place. And where shall I not find you? The world is full of your glory. I sought your closeness. I called to you with all my heart. And going out to meet you, I found you coming toward me. On page 243, we're ready for Avinu Malkeinu in just a moment. And I'm going to share a teaching, a very brief teaching of Rabbi David Seidenberg, otherwise known as like the eco-rabbi. And so he's one of my rabbis, because you got to have an eco-rabbi, maybe more than one. And he points out that, I have to find the line, for the big chorus of Avinu Malkeinu, I'm trying to look at how, on 244, when you get to the end, Avinu Malkeinu, Chanenu Vanenu, Ki ein banu ma'asim. It says our deeds are insufficient. Because it's like, because there aren't in us deeds. His interpretation is, it doesn't say our deeds are insufficient. It says we do not have deeds. We do not have deeds yet. Our slate is clean for the coming year. We did Kol Nidrei to tell us that you're allowed to go as deep as you can go into your hidden areas to figure out how to raise up the angel, the neshama in you. And you can make a vow to do it. And you'll still be forgiving if you don't measure up to be one of the angels. You don't have to carry the baggage of the year into Yom Kippur. Don't let it weigh you down. You arrive with no deeds. Your slate is clean. Ki ein banu ma'asim. We do not yet have deeds. We ask for our ark opener to come up on 243. Please rise. Our ark openers. Shana Tova, Shana Tova. Beautiful. Repeat after me. Okay.
They repeat.
For when we get to the...
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Ein Lanu Melech Ela Ata.
Avinu
Malkeinu Aseh Imanu Leman Shmecha. Avinu Malkeinu Chadesh Aleinu Shana Tova. Avinu Malkeinu Batel Me'aleinu Kol Gezerot Kashot. Avinu Malkeinu Batel Machshvot Sonehu. Avinu Malkeinu Hafert Atzat Oiveinu. Avinu Malkeinu Kale Kol Tsar Umastin Me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu Kalei Deva V'Chera V'Rava V'Shviu Mashchit V'Avon U'Shmat B'Bnei Britecha. Avinu Malkeinu Slach M'chal Lavonotenu.
Avinu Malkeinu Slach M'chal
Avinu Malkeinu V'Cheva V'V'Sha'enu V'Chatotenu Mineged Einecha.
Avinu
Malkeinu Hachazirenu B'Tshuva Shlema Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Chazirenu B'Tshuva Shlema
Avinu Malkeinu Shlach Refuah Shlema L'Chol Yamecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Shlach Refuah Shlema L'Chol
Avinu
Yamecha.
Malkeinu Zachrenu B'Zikaron Tov Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Zachrenu B'Zikaron Tov Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Chaim Tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer
Avinu
Chaim
Malkeinu
Tovim.
Kodvenu B'Sefer Gulav Yeshua.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Gulav
Avinu
Yeshua.
Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Parnasav V'Kakala. Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Zchuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Zchuyot.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Slicha U'Mechila.
Avinu Malkeinu Kodvenu B'Sefer Slicha U'Mechila. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for good in the book of life. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of redemption. Inscribe us in the book of sustenance. Inscribe us in the book of merit. Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us in the book of forgiveness. We continue silently through the bottom of 243 and to the top of 244. Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Lemancha Im Lo Lemanenu.
Avinu Malkeinu Aseh Lemancha Im Lo Lemanenu.
Avinu Malkeinu Chanenu Vanenu. Avinu Malkeinu Chanenu Vanenu Ki Ein Banu Masim. Aseh Manu Tzedaka V'Chesed. Aseh Manu Tzedaka V'Chesed Ve'Hoshienu.
A little louder.
Avinu Malkeinu
Let's finish it strong. As the Ark curtain is closed, we may be seated. You know, every Kol Nidrei, I wonder why I never see Amanda and Shachar on the bima more. They always sign up for this honor. And then I realize, of course, except for this holiday, she is always taking care of us. I invite Deborah Ball, president of the congregation, to share some words at this time. And if anyone has trouble hearing Deborah, please make your way up and tap my shoulder, and we'll do something about it.
I'm Deborah Ball, and I'm honored to be serving as the president of Beth Israel Congregation. As we stand at the threshold of a new year, we're profoundly aware of the journey of our lives. This time is a gift in our tradition. Teshuvah turns us back to contemplate the past year. It offers us the opportunity for reflection, contemplation, atonement, and forgiveness. Although we cannot know the future, we turn toward it, seeking to learn from our past. We make new vows, we endeavor not to repeat our mistakes. But as we read last Shabbat in Parsha Vayelech, we will fail again. As Moses prepares to die, Adonai tells him that the people will go astray, that they will forsake the efforts of holiness. The people will surely break the covenant and forget what they've been taught. But like teachers and parents, Adonai will continue on with patience, promising that despite the certainty of our going astray, to be with us and with them as they entered the land of Canaan. Certainly that confidence that exudes in Psalm 27, which we've read daily through the last month, can sustain us as we face the next year, even as we pray to avoid harm, danger, illness, and threat. We pray in that psalm to, quote, live in the house of Adonai all the days of our lives. I paused on this. What does it mean to live, and what does it really mean to all the days of our lives? Obviously, it can mean for each of us, the days allotted to us as individuals, a total that we, of course, cannot know. So that means that we can each seek to live our lives as fully as possible, striving what it means to be holy and to love and to act for justice in this world. I suggest that we can take the prospect of time ahead to belong to each of us as individuals, but also to all of us as a collective. Yom Kippur is certainly an intensely individual day, but it's also a profoundly communal one. In our tradition, we recite the Al-Chet prayer many, many times over the next 24 hours, naming long lists of sins for which we atone together as a community. Evil that has transpired, harm that has been caused, damage that has been done, violence that has been committed. We're supposed to understand that we're collectively responsible. We're not alone. This is a rare and precious part of our tradition, and in fact, our texts and teachings are replete with notions of collective responsibility, collective action, collective living. Our community is a vessel for the development of collective. It's not just this building, the synagogue, but it's us, the collective we. The existence of Beth Israel, founded 106 years ago, was a commitment, a statement by those who came before us of the necessity of a sacred space, a conservative Jewish congregation here in Ann Arbor, Michigan. This reminds us that we are not just who we are now as a congregation. We are also those who came before us and those who will come after us. Those of us who have already made commitments to life and legacy are investing in that future, and I urge that many more of us do that as well in the coming year. Thinking about the us as a collective suggests a different way of what it means to support and sustain our Beit Yisrael, our Beth Israel. Both physically, our building and its, I'll say this to Harvey, its aging and environmentally unconscious roof, but also metaphorically, and to Michael as well. This past summer, my family and I invested in a share of a local organic farm, a CSA, or Community Supported Agriculture. We knew that by paying our share in April, we would partake of a share of the farm's harvest from week to week. We enjoyed vegetables we would have never thought to buy, and we relished the ones that we've always enjoyed cooking and eating. But we didn't get to order the produce that we preferred. We were sharing in the costs of sustaining that farm and participating in its bounty as it grew. We were supporting an important communal effort to grow healthy vegetables and flowers, and I thought a lot about how that was different from a kind of fee-for-service approach, such as at a local fitness center, where we could decide to join, but only pay for what we wanted to use, and we could suspend our membership with just a month's notice at any time. These two examples are profoundly different ways of joining. In the first example, we joined a collective enterprise helping to support its existence. In the second, we could pay for exactly what we wanted without concern for the ongoing existence of the place. To think about this, I want to turn ahead or back to Parshat Teruma. In this parsha, we read what seem to be just endless lists of the specifications for building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. we read that Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Tell the Israelite people to bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart so moves him. And these are the gifts you shall accept from them: gold, silver, copper, blue, purple, and crimson yarns, fine linen, goat's hair, tanned ram skins, dolphin skins, and acacia wood, oil for lighting, spices for the anointing of the oil and the aromatic incense, lapis lazuli and other stones for setting for the ephod and for the breastpiece. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them." This detail is really amazing. But really? We're not about to remodel the sanctuary here with goat's hair or dolphin skins, I'm quite sure. But a closer look reveals a deeper lesson for us. Giving for the common good creates the opportunity to create something more than any one of us can do alone. It creates the possibility of collective action and creation. The Mishkan was constructed by the Israelites for their community, and each drew individual enrichment from the collective act and the resulting sanctuary. This parsha also provides guidance for creating holiness in the ordinary acts of our everyday lives. First, we learn that it's sometimes important to give what is needed or wanted by the recipient, not merely what we choose to give. Notice, too, that this means that it's important for us to be able to say what it is that we do need. Often we're reluctant to say what we need, and then we're disappointed when what is offered is something we can't use. Of course, sometimes the best gift is to offer something the recipient doesn't know to ask for or to want, but the lesson here is that gifts that respond to what the recipient needs require communication between the giver and the receiver, and this intertwines giving and receiving in enriching ways. These sensitive connections with others are a form of holiness. As 2021 grew to a close, we asked you to contribute to an end-of-the-year appeal. We were overwhelmed by the immediate and generous response. We exceeded what we had asked for in only 3 weeks. Thank you. It taught every one of us a lesson about our possibilities together. A second lesson is that gifts offered willingly, not asked for, also create opportunities for holiness. If the giver feels compelled to give, it can weaken the significance of a gift. It can make it seem less like a gift and more like an obligation. But yet, as Rav Nadav spoke a couple of weeks ago from the Bima, obligation provides structure. It provides structure for paying attention to others, for attending to needs greater than one's own. Obligations offer moral imperatives that enrich what it means to act as a human being and add holiness to the acts of everyday life. Obligations are as such gifts in themselves. Truma is a collective noun, and the work described in the Parsha is collective, not individual work. The commitment required to create community itself fosters commitment and community. The offering of individuals given freely combined with others to make more than any one person can do alone. The details of the plan to build the Mishkan coordinated the collective effort so that what was built would be beautiful and not merely an assembly of random elements. Collective work requires shared goals, the articulation of common purpose, and the willingness to act for the communal good. Our new mission and vision here at Beth Israel, and our strategic goals and specific action steps, our plans to track our progress toward those, these are part of our detailed plan to build and sustain the Mishkan. One of the most provocative and rich ideas in the Torah is the idea of chesed. We've already, I think, said the word chesed more than 20 times since we've been in the sanctuary tonight. Translated as love, kindness, loving kindness, I love this for its ideas and also for its inherent untranslatability. In the list of attributes of Adonai that we will recite over and over again across the next 24 hours, chesed is the only attribute that is listed twice. It's the only attribute listed twice of Adonai, so listen for that the next time we read it. What is chesed really? What does it mean to practice chesed? In the Talmud tractate Sukkah, which the board studied at our retreat last month, we learned that acts of loving kindness, or chesed, are superior to tzedakah or charity in 3 ways. First, charity can be performed only with money, while chesed can be performed by us as persons and with our money. 2, charity is given to the poor, while kindness is for anyone. And third, charity is for the living, while chesed is for the living and for the dead. As we look through the veil of intense prayer, teshuvah, renewal on this day, I ask us that we study, think, and act together to develop new ways to strengthen and sustain our community, that we explore over the next year how chesed and our collective fundamental orientation to what it means to be a we, to be a collective, might inspire a new path forward for us here at Beth Israel. As we emerge from the past 3 years, haltingly for sure, but emerging, we have an opportunity to reimagine how we collectively support this community. What are the gifts or offerings that we need to ask one another for? What do we each need and what do we need collectively? What are the gifts or offerings that we may voluntarily choose to give? We will be talking more about this in the coming months. As we look to our present and to our future, let's draw deeply from the teachings and values of our tradition. I look forward to these conversations and ask that you stand ready to consider new ways to be, to thrive, and to continue. I ask that we think about how being Jewish offers us a different way in this American space to think about what it is to join together in ways that are different than were we a fitness center. And I ask that we look for ways to practice chesed, loving kindness, with one another, expressing more often simple appreciation, gratitude, love, and comfort. May you each be inscribed for a sweet year. I wish you a Shana Tova, a year of sweetness and joy, good health and restoration, healing and optimism. I wish it for you as individuals and as the collection of individuals who's gathered in our sacred and physical and streaming spaces tonight. And I wish it for the us that is Beth Israel, the ineffable us that is collective, that is more than the sum of us, and that stretches out beyond us to the future of Beth Israel here in Ann Arbor next year and for years to come. Gmar Chatima Tova.
Gmar Tov. Yashar Kochek. No dolphins were harmed in the creation of this service. Thank you, Deborah. As Neil prepares for the Kaddish Shalom on 245, I'm going to read a positive reverse al Chet by Rabbi Joseph Toloshkin. For the mitzvah I perform by happily donating money. For the mitzvah I perform by consciously focusing on someone's positive traits, even when I was angry, or at least not exaggerating the incident that made me mad. For the mitzvah I perform by not passing on information that was not mine to share. For the mitzvah I perform by admitting to my spouse or my children or my friends that I was wrong. For the mitzvah I perform by graciously hosting people for Shabbat. For the mitzvah I perform by introducing friends to each other and introducing professional contacts to each other, rather than hoarding the people in my life. For the mitzvah I perform by remembering not to reply all, thereby avoiding wasting everyone's time. For the mitzvah I perform by donating my time, even when I would rather be watching something on Netflix. For all these things, God, please remember and inspire us to do more acts of chesed like these in the year ahead. What mitzvahs did you perform this year? Kaddish Shalom, 245.
Yitkadav v'yikadav shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'alma divrach yerutei v'yamalik malchutei בחייכנו וביומכם ובחייך בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם עולמי המאיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה שמי דקודשה
בריחו.
לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמת אדם ירנה בימה תושבחתה ונחמתה אדם ירן בימה יאמרו
אמן.
תתקבל צלותון ובאותון בכל ישראל קודם מבוהון דבשמיא ויאמרו יש לומר רבה משמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו
אמן.
עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל יאמרו
Amen. Aleinu 246.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר ראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים עמם, ושכינת זו בגבהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אינו, עמק מלכנו אפס עולתו, קרקעתו בתורתו, וידעת היום והשיבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחתינו. ככתוב בתורתך, לא ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
We may be seated as we turn to page 248 and we peruse silently Psalm 27. Foreshadowing a little bit of Jonah tomorrow afternoon, we have, "Were God to hide me in God's sukkah on the calamitous day, were God to enfold me in the secret recesses of God's tent, I would be raised up in a protecting fort." Do not hide your face from me. Do not act angrily toward me. You have been my help. Do not forsake me. Achat shalti.
Achat shalti meit Adonai otavakesh. Achat shalti meit Adonai otavakesh. Shivti b'veit Adonai kol yamei chayai. Lachazot ben Noam Adonai ulevaker b'heichalo. Lachazot ben Noam Adonai ulevaker b'heichalo. Lulei hamanti l'rot b'tuv Adonai beretz chayim kavei el Adonai chadaf amitzibecha v'kavei el Adonai.
Mourner's Kaddish, page 247, for those who are reciting on this evening. Yigadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah v'yamad divrak kiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala uvizman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam olamei almaya. Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei d'kudesha brichu le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. You may be seated. Since there are only a few words of mine and then Yigdal to finish the service, I'm going to make a few announcements now. The first is, don't miss, following the service, Sandy Finkel's meditation. We've been waiting for it to come back as something more than just online. And Sandy will be available today next door, as usual, and if you want directions, but the Kol Nidrei meditation is beautiful. Second, I want to make sure you know about fasting. Fasting is meant to encourage the introspection, to connect you to your angel roots who do not need to eat, and to connect you to the roots of someone who is, in a sense, aware of their own mortality, and for whom, at that late point, often it is the appetite which subsides. We channel those different energies, but it is not meant to be unhealthy and is not meant to be overly onerous, and is not meant to be just a challenge that means, as Deuterizé will say tomorrow, if all you did was fast and nothing else, don't be so smart about calling it an accomplishment. So remember that if you have medicine is not considered food, and if you have any kind of medical condition that means that fasting affects you in an adverse way, then please be mindful of not only your doctor's instructions, but common sense. And in addition to that, I always mention that there is a kind of misdemeanor. And by the way, if you're pregnant or nursing, fasting is also, you are freed from that obligation. But in addition to that, the Mishnah makes a misdemeanor. That's my words for it, not the legal term. It's a misdemeanor to eat or drink one mouthful of food per hour. You actually get to do both, right? Because they're separate categories. So that if fasting is hard for you, but you want the experience of Yom Kippur, then I think the tradition has a message, which is rather than say, I'll fast till noon, and I'll miss the martyrology service and the avodah service and the beautiful prayers, because I can only make it that far, maybe consider in intervals having very small portions to keep yourself healthy and your body going, but still being in the rhythm of the holiday and the fast. For more information, you can contact me separately. Okay. We now have, Deborah, I was going to tell you, so we now have 23 hours and 20 minutes. Rob always turns to me toward Neela, and he was like, wow, I'm going to be doing these pages really fast. So Rob knows how to land the plane exactly on time. Many of you already know that there are there are 4 New Years in Rabbinic and Jewish tradition, Rabbinic tradition. The 4 New Years are the New Year of the trees. We have the New Year of the animals, which just passed about 5 weeks ago. We should do more with the New Year of animals, and more than maybe just Pet Shabbat. We should really honor it. And then we have 2 other New Years. We have the New Year that inaugurates the month of Pesach, of Passover, because it is on that New Year that we gain our freedom. And you don't have control of your time unless you are free. And those who are oppressed know there is no new year for them when they don't have control of their time. And then, 6 months later, we have Rosh Hashanah, another new year. And as you may have noticed in Jewish tradition, we are very cyclical, right? We're just coming down the home stretch of Deuteronomy, and we get to Kol Nidrei, and we get to Yom Kippur, and then all of a sudden we're just starting right over again with Sukkot and living in nature and reading about the creation of nature at Simchat Torah and getting the new seasons, and everything keeps going around in a cycle, right? We wander and we wander and we wander in the wilderness, and the promised land is always there, and we're always in the process of getting there. So the 2 New Years, the beginning of freedom, and Rosh Hashanah, 6 months, diametrically opposed in the circle, are strongly linked. For on Pesach, we're supposed to be asking, what is freedom? And how are we free? And how are others free? And on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, the 10 days of awe, we're supposed to be asking, how have I used my freedom? And how can I use my freedom in the coming year? The Seder, as you well know, was transformed into a Hellenistic symposium by the Talmudic rabbis in order to pose and solicit Socratic dialogue and come to conclusions about the great human question, not what is love, what is friendship, but what is freedom? And the question is pursued as a group and philosophically and personally in the Seder. But ironically, our answers to that question in our Seders rarely come to a conclusion that our sages of blessed memory would support. The sages see freedom as a momentary state, not a chronic or a static state. In the terms of 20th century philosopher Isaiah Berlin, the freedom that adolescents crave and that Americans celebrate is the freedom not to be interfered with. But the truest freedom is the freedom to create something over time, a creation that has values embedded within it. Our country is still learning something about that kind of freedom. It's what you do with your freedom that defines it. To define it by the negative, by the perpetual insistence that no one's telling you what to do, is both immature and ultimately untrue. Why? So think of it this way. I speak from personal experience when I tell you that I know I have the freedom to develop an exercise regimen. But if I don't do that, why celebrate the freedom? Is it real? I have the freedom to help the poor, but how much am I doing that? Why celebrate the freedom? We can celebrate the freedom on Rosh Hashanah, before Pesach, but why celebrate that freedom now? What have I done with the freedom? It's the freedom to create a project infused with values over time, as Deborah was saying in her remarks. I have the freedom to develop more harmonious communication patterns with my spouse. We have a great marriage, but I should be getting out Marshall Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication book which has helped us in the past before we had kids, and even work through the workbook, which we've never done. And it would seriously make true the prayers in the liturgy that we're saying, at least for me. But I don't. So isn't it a bit strange to celebrate the freedom we have to do all sorts of things that we don't do? Wouldn't it make more sense to celebrate the freedom that produces the creation of that which is praiseworthy? During the days of awe, are we celebrating in the liturgy our freedom to change? But we're not changing. Is the liturgy challenging us to use our freedom to create something in order to make freedom real? Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said profoundly and truly, unfree people are horrified by the suggestion that they are unfree. They do not want to hear nor acknowledge what we all know from human nature and from direct knowledge in our own lives, that, quote, life is not a neutral ground. In this life of ours, the undirected goes astray. The haphazard becomes chaotic. What is left to chance is abandoned. I understood this firsthand during the epiphany I had when dropping off my children at the Young Fours preschool, TK, whatever, Young Fours, when they were little. And I know I've shared with a few of you this story before, maybe because I don't have an endless amount of epiphanies. And I feel like part of what faith is what Heschel said. Faith is keeping faith with our moments of insight that have been granted to us. So I remember it was so beautiful. They're so cute, right? You can't drop them off. You have to get out with them. You walk them up to the little gate that's about this high, and where all adults are, and they go in each one, and the TK and the Young Ford teachers welcome them, and you're trying to take pictures, and I'm hiding all my crying and all these things. And they finally go in to their little room. That's their own little cute little bathroom, their own little garden. It's all nice and separate. And then the door shuts. And you wipe away the tears, and you're in this profound state of vulnerability, like on High Holy Days. And then people turn to me, and they say, so, is your daughter enrolled in Young Five soccer? And did you know that if she's not, there are only 2 spots left, and if you don't get to it, then you can't get to it in kindergarten soccer, and then they can't do the program over the summer, and then it's already, trust me, this has never happened in Ann Arbor that I've missed a deadline for signing up kids for something in this town. That's a joke, because I have missed every deadline for signing up kids to do things in this town. And then they're like, oh, and by the way, do you know it's little Brian's birthday party at the park on Saturday, and everyone's going to be there? And I'm like, they're 4. But there's going to be a jumpy, and there may even be a magician, and everyone's going to be there, and you should be there too, because everyone's going to be there, and put it on your calendar. And suddenly I'm sitting there finding out, and then don't even get me started on dance lessons, because if they don't start with the tutu thing, then they can't get to hip hop, and then they can't just freely express their personality in free expression class when they're in 5th grade. Because obviously 4-year-olds don't know how to express their inner personality freely in dance, so we have to make sure they get there. And I immediately realized that my calendar would completely fill up serving other gods. And the only thing that I knew in that moment was thank God for Shabbat. Because I knew at least the first thing I could say is we can't go on Saturday, all right? And then I saw a couple of families saying we can't go on Sunday. And we made eye contact. And I also had to step back because I saw how my calendar was going to fill up forever. And I felt so grateful to be a Jew. And I felt so grateful because my freedom is wrapped up in projects to create something infused with values, created by the gift of the wisdom of my ancestors. God bless them. The freedom to create, the freedom to choose, is a momentary state. I was in that moment. In these moments of decision, we decide whom we will be in service to. It's those moments I say, am I going to marry this person? Because if I do have some freedom here before I do it, but there's not as much freedom afterward, because I've chosen and made a commitment to someone whom I will serve. Will I serve the gods of my children's extracurricular activities as defined by the parents at the school? Will I serve the God of the traditions of Judaism, of my ancestors? Moments of freedom of decision to basically decide what patterns we will live, almost like the tributaries of the Nile, which routes we will go round and round and round on. So I mentioned a potential marriage partner moment. Not all of us marry. How about the grandparent moment, where one had one image of what their retirement years were going to be, and they have a moment of freedom. They have this temporary state, and they find themselves saying, yes, I will move to be near you, or you, if you move to be near me, I will do childcare 3 days a week. And then they add in date night, so it's 3 days and a night. And they don't have time or energy to cook Shabbos dinner. So it's 3 days a night and Friday night Shabbos dinner, leftovers on Saturday afternoon, and entertaining the kids. Life is suddenly filled with service to the family. One ought not to overemphasize one's freedom to choose ways to spend time when one is already living the service one has committed to, often without understanding it consciously. Parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents serve their children. Some of us in the sandwich generation, as the fifth commandment tells us, we serve our parents. Teachers serve their students. Healthcare workers serve their patients. Everyone working in an organization serves their clients. The people they have agreed to serve. So true freedom, according to the rabbis and sages of blessed memory, is the following. And they're assuming that we're going to get there in the Passover Seder, which is very sweet. That true freedom is serving God. Because they don't use the word freedom per se, they use the word being redeemed from serving who you do not wish to serve and being granted the freedom to serve God. Avodah, service. I don't know if I can beat Deborah for the number of times chesed appears, but I've been paying attention to how many times the word service appears in the liturgy, how we serve. So here is my challenge to you to take into your fast and into tomorrow morning. How are you serving those who have chosen to serve? And are you serving God at the same time? Because all serving must involve God. Not in the way we see religion on TV with, oh, do you believe in God? Or, I don't know, this is, if you buy food with a hechsher, then you're serving God. It means that in each part of our life, our question is, when I am serving, am I also serving God? We Jews are good at saying what are the details of a mitzvah, like a clever child at the Seder, and we are bad at being the simple child, saying, how can I serve God in what I'm doing? It means saying, when I am serving, what is my mission here? Is it to get the kids to school? Is it to make my kids happy? Is it to get them into college? Is it to help them fulfill their athletic or extracurricular potential? Is that the mission God has for me? Or is it it's our mission to babysit for God? Our mission to raise our children strong in values and mental spiritual practices, have them experience the bumps and difficulties of life, and apprentice them into solving their own problems rather than us solving them for them. Our children are sent to us from God, and we are to raise them for God, and that is how we serve them. How do I bring holiness into my projects? That's the days of awe. as opposed to the New Year of Passover? How do I bring holiness into the projects in which I'm serving in the use of my freedom that I committed to? How do I remember my mission within the schedule structures I already inhabit? As one wise minyan goer once told me, Rabbi, it's really simple, my view on Judaism. God knows who you are by your calendar and by your checkbook. Okay, that was a little bit before online payments, but you know what I mean. How do I serve with my checkbook? When I reach my deathbed, will I ever regret making donations to the nonprofits whose missions and projects I'm supporting? Will I ever regret writing a check to the community share farm when I didn't really want to eat 3 bales of kale? I kept that farm going, right? Don't regret it. And how will my calendar be filled? So I'm serving the missions that God is giving me. And I introspect to open up to that. And you do when you pay your membership dues and donations. You are serving the temple and not just asking the temple to serve you and those who show up to Minyan and those who read Torah and those who are volunteering on committees and those who help at the school and those who help in so many ways. You are serving and not just being served. Your patients, your customers, your students, your siblings, your friends, your grandchildren or children, yourself. When you do the al-chet and you see those things, those are the ways we are not serving God when we are serving others. So I ask you to use the holiday. Whom are you serving? And you serve God by serving them in a better and more holy way. Gemar Tov. Yigdal, page 250.
יגדל אלוקים חי וישתבח, נמצא ואין עת אל מציאותו, אחד ואין יחיד כייחודו, ולעם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו. אין לא דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, אינו אדון עולם ולא נוצר. יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפן נבואתו נתנו. אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד, נביא ומביט את תמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמו אל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו, יחל לפעל ולא ימיר דתו. יולמים זולתו, צופה ויודע סתרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו, גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרשעתו, ישלח לקץ שמיים משיחנו, לפדות מחכה קץ ישועת, מתים יחייל ממרוך חסדו. Baruch Hadei Ad Shem
Let's finish strong.
Metim Yachayel Berov Chasto. Baruch Hadei Ad Shem Tehilato.
I guess we weren't really finishing because the service continues at 8:30 in the morning. There's nothing you're going to do before then. That's kosher. And so Sandy Finkel next door for meditation. I'll see you at 8:30 a.m. tomorrow. Tia bracha.
Beautiful, simple message.
Thank you. And beautiful stuff. Uh-oh.
Okay, well, it's going to